Shalom, brothers and sisters. I'm Brother Jacob, and to my right,
Brother Bethel.
and to my left,
I'm Brother Anab.
we're with the Israelites, Saints of Christ. We're based right here in Richmond, Virginia. And today, we're going to take a walk on the slave trail. The same trail that our ancestors walked when they were brought here and made slaves, according to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter.
Here is Ann Carroll's Landing off of the James River here in Virginia. This is where our ancestors were brought into the country. Give me the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 49.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Verse 50. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor shall favor to the young.
Now by Esau's own accord, he's going to let you know what he's done. Here it says, on May 21st, 1607, a week after establishing Jamestown, Christopher Newport led a small band of colonists. The scripture said, a nation of fierce countenance, whose tongue thou shalt not understand, shall come against you. Here, Christopher Newport led a small band of colonists establishing Jamestown. It goes on to say, including John Smith, up the James River. They were carrying out orders from their sponsors, the Virginia Company of London, to discover the river above you. How can you discover something that's already been discovered? All right? Only thing we can't go to Jamaica and discover Jamaica. We could go there and visit. It's already been established. On this, the first of more than a dozen expeditions up the James, the explorers visited the Indian town Powhatan, of which place wrote Smith, their great emperor taketh his name. The town was situated near the river. Then, as today, the waters in this part of the James were important fisheries, especially when androgynous fish such as striped bass and sturgeon came from the sea to spawn in fresh waters. Again, we can't go to England, hop on a plane, and say I'm going to go discover England just because I've never been there. I've never been to London. I can go there and visit, and I can't take nothing over. Yet, the so-called white man, according to the scripture, came here to discover the river above you, while there were already people here, as they said, visited the Indian town Powhatan, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. Visited the Indian town Powhatan. Where is this Indian town today? Do Indians live there? Do natives live there? No. Because that nation of fierce countenance, which did not regard the person of old, nor did they show favor to the young, pushed these brothers and sisters onto reservations, just like the scripture said.
All right, brothers and sisters, so now we're going to walk the trail that our forefathers walked. You get to see these same woods that they had to walk through barefooted, naked, chained together, whatever. We're about to walk the trail.
As Brother Jacob just mentioned about our people walking through here barefooted, it's a little bit more trodden down now, but you can imagine when our people first walked through here and it was rough and, man, no shoes on. Man, it was just horrible conditions, man. It really just puts in your mind, man, the stuff that how they tortured our people, what they done to our people. It wasn't a pretty sight, man.
You can imagine walking through here with barely any clothes on. And you know, the way ticks work, they climb up to the high spots of these leaves and stuff, and they wait for you to walk by and attach to your clothes. So you can imagine all the insects, fleas, ticks getting on our people going through here. Just terrible punishment within itself.
After a long boat ride. A long treacherous boat ride.
But it's all because we transgressed the laws of our God. So he punished us. The Most High is not a joke.
You imagine walking on these sticker brows, man?
Sticker brows?
Yeah, those green things, those things hard. They fall off on the ground. You imagine stepping on that, man, with no shoes?
Dang. And they here today.
Yeah.
They might have been even more plentiful back in that day. Man. Again, they turned this into a fishing spot. How you doing, little sis? Now it's a local fishing spot.
All right, we're here at this plaque, and it's called Crossing the Atlantic. Before we read this, I want to go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 68.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 68.
All right, this is Moses speaking to the children of Israel, the Israelites. Come on.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again.
So the Lord is going to bring you into Egypt, which means bondage again. How?
With ships.
With ships. Our people were brought over here on ships, on cargo slave ships, and we were made to be slaves. Come on.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again.
All right, come on.
And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
So there, when we got off the ships here in Richmond, Virginia, we were sold to our enemies. I don't even have to tell you who that is. Come on.
For bondman and bondwoman.
For bondmen and bondwomen. Slave men and slave women. Come on.
And no man shall buy you.
Meaning no man is going to redeem you. Now, this plaque says, spanning nearly 350 years, the transatlantic slave trade displaced over 12 million Africans. According to the scriptures, that's a lie. We were on the continent of Africa, but we aren't Africans. We have a nationality. Our nationality is Israelites. 12 million Israelites from their native lands to foreign soils. European traders, also known as Edomites, eager to fill the labor vacuum in a new world, participated in the capture of and sale of African men, meaning Israelites.
Bondman,
Right.
bondwoman.
Women and children. The victims experienced unimaginably inhumane, horrific circumstances as they crossed the Atlantic Ocean, a journey known as the Middle Passage. Their destination, the New World, the place that Columbus was looking for. Primarily Brazil and the Caribbean. Roughly 4% more than 480,000 of Africans, Israelites, who had been torn from their homeland, stepped on the North American seaboard. Although the early Chesapeake colonists of Maryland and Virginia initially relied upon the indentured servitude of white Europeans. See, the white people were indentured servants. We were chattel slaves to fulfill their labor needs. The personal gain of a few wealthy landowners determined the fate of thousands. By the dawn of the 18th century, Virginia was wholly committed to the practice of slavery. Richmond, Virginia was the biggest slave port in the Americas. Now, down here, about the trail, Designed as a walking path, the Richmond Slave Trail chronicles the history of the trade in enslaved Africans, Israelites, from their homeland to Virginia, which, by the way, Israel is our homeland, not Africa, to other locations in the Americas until 1865. The trail begins at the Manchester Docks, which is where we are right now. We're at the Manchester Docks, which alongside Rockets Landing on the north side of the river, operated as a major port in the massive downriver slave trade, making Richmond the largest source of enslaved blacks on the east coast of America.
Why did they go from saying Africans to blacks?
From 1830 to 1860.
They slipped.
While many of the slaves were shipped on to New Orleans and other deep south ports, the trail follows the footsteps of those who remained here and crossed the James River. We're going to go there. Often chained together in a coffle. Once reaching the northern riverbank, the trail then follows a route through the slave markets and auction houses of Richmond. Can't see it from here, but we're going to go by there, where they sold us. They sold us in great numbers. You know, they sold all of our ancestors down here.
Would that be like a yoke?
There's a thing down by Buffalo Wild Wings, right? A thing right there.
Right. That's what. Yeah, we're heading down that way. Besides, the reconciliation statue commemorating the international triangular slave trade. What they mean by that is they would take us from the land of Africa into South America, the Caribbean, and then come back up to the United States, and then from there they go back to Europe. That's what they mean by triangular slave trade. Because they took stuff everywhere they went. They took stuff, and then they bought money and victuals back.
Right.
Gold, silver, rum, all that kind of stuff. Now, and on the site of the notorious Lumpkin Slave Jail, and leading on to Richmond's African burial ground, once called the burial ground for Negroes. That's another byword, but we're more Negroes than we are Africans.
Right.
And the first African Baptist church. The first African Baptist church. Okay, that's where they mentally destroyed us in our mind, in their church. A center of African American life in pre-Civil War Richmond.
As we travel down the slave trail, we come up to see more historical landmarks. Right here it says merchants of slavery. When you read right here, it says plan of British slavery ship Brookings. It's a book where you can find this picture of this information. They even had us detailed off. Right here, if you read in this section, it says men, women, and boys. They even had us sectioned off different in the slave ship. But right here it says merchants of slavery. But the circumstances which struck us most forcibly was how it was possible for such a number of human beings to exist, which means it was a lot of us. So when you read in other historical references, when it talks about how many of us died over the Middle Passage and how many of us came over on ships, some of y'all might be like, oh man, 12 million? No, it can't be. But they telling you right here, it was a mass number of us. Like it says in Scripture, Israel shall be as the sands of the sea. I mean, it's going to be a lot of us. You can't number it. But it says packed up and wedged together as tight as they could cram them. So that means they tried to make every trip count. Like if capacity was only 500, they was trying to get 700 in that ship. Because they tried to make every trip count because slavery was big business. It says in low. It's saying low sails 3 feet high. So you cramming people in low sails 3 feet high. You just jamming them in there. Jamming them in there. It'd be like trying to stuff a bunch of people in a cubby hole. Sardines in the can. Right. It says 3 feet high. The greater part of which, except that immediately under the graded hatchways, was shut out from light or air. So a lot of them was in total darkness, solitary confinement. You can imagine somebody in solitary confinement with no light, no air. Suffocate, man. It plays on your mental. You start going crazy. You start seeing stuff. You start hallucinating. By the time if you survived in that part to the time you got off the ship a year and a half later, man, you weren't even the same person. It shows you how they treated us, man. It says light and air. And this when the meter exposed to the open sky was standing in the shades on our deck at 89 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot. In the shade. So that's hot. You let somebody put you in 89 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to be like, man, it's hot in here. It says the space between the decks was divided into two components. 3 feet, 3 inches high. The size of one was 16 feet by 18, and of the other 40 by 21. Into the first were crammed the women and girls. The second, the men and boys. 226 fellows. So when you say cramming something in something, that means it really ain't no room, but you just keep pushing it. You keep making room. You cramming it in there. You making it fit. You can imagine, man, being crammed up in a car. Imagine being crammed in a boat. You chain together. You can't go to the bathroom. They feed it wasn't like they was getting meals. They throwing slop down there, feeding whatever. If you ate, you ate. You didn't, you didn't.
We went to the bathroom on each other.
On each other, right. So you can imagine if a woman still having her cycle, she's bleeding. You can imagine, man, the diseases that our people was dying from. Some of them probably was glad to be thrown over a ship, man. Would you rather die than for somebody to pee on you, for somebody to defecate on you, somebody to have their menstrual cycle on you, man? That's horrible conditions. And this is how they did our people. It says in another space between 220 fellow creatures were thus thrust into one space, 288 feet square, and 336 into another space, 800 feet square, giving to the whole an average of 23 inches, and to each of the women not more than 13 inches. So you can just imagine how much room they like this. They like this in there. It wasn't no
enough room to fit your body, nothing
right,
more.
Nothing more, nothing less, because slavery was big business. So they tried to make every trip count. But we can read that in scripture, the book of Isaiah, chapter 22, verse 17.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 22 and verse 17. Behold, the Lord will carry thee away with a mighty captivity.
A mighty captivity. Mighty. A mighty captivity means mass. Mighty means powerful. A powerful captivity. What you read right here is powerful impact upon people, man. That wasn't something they weren't on no slave ship. They weren't on no love boat, no cruise ship. They was in bondage. Read.
And will surely cover thee. Verse 18. He will surely, violently, turn and toss thee like a ball.
Violently, turn and toss thee like a ball. Anybody ever seen a ship on those massive waves? Man, you up and down, back and forth, tossed to and fro like a ball. Read.
Into a large country.
Into a large country. We were brought from our homeland, Jerusalem, from the western banks of Africa. When you ever hear about the gate, or the door of no return, we left those docks and we came over here to the Americas. Read.
There shalt thou die.
There shalt thou die. And we died. Oh boy, did we die. Physically and mentally and spiritually, because now we're serving other people God. Give me Revelation chapter 18, verse 13. It said merchants of slavery. So if a merchant is big business. Ain't nobody doing more big business than America. Everybody wants to buy and sell in America because they have God's jewel. They have the people that don't own nothing, don't manufacture nothing. So what do? We are consumers. Read.
The book of Revelation, chapter 18 and verse 13. And cinnamon and odors.
Cinnamon and odors. They're showing you that different type of spices and different type of things that this country, America or Babylon the Great, is dealing in.
And ointments of frankincense.
Ointments of frankincense. Read.
And wine.
Wine.
And oil.
Oil.
And fine flour.
Fine flour.
And wheat.
And wheat.
And beasts.
And beasts.
And sheep.
And sheep.
And horses.
And horses.
And chariots.
And chariots.
And slaves.
And slaves. They're pointing you out to this country, America the Great, Babylon the Great, merchants of slavery. They're letting you know in scriptures, what did they sell? You're reading right here that they sold Israelites, so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans of Negro descent.
And souls of men.
Souls of men. This is what this place has done to us, man.
As we further down the slave trail, we come to yet another marker. This one given a little more detail of which our ancestors experienced upon coming off of those cargo slave ships. Here it says, the despair of slavery. I had noticed the bad conditioning of this gang several times on the road. The poor wretches being travel worn and half starved, and having large sores caused by their loads and the blows and cuts they received. The ropes that confined them were also in some instances eating into their flesh. And I saw one woman still carrying the infant that had died in her arms of starvation. With that, we're going to go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 67.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 67. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were even. And at even thou shalt say, would God it were morning.
As our ancestors traveled these roads in chain gangs, which you see today in prison, which is comprised of our brothers and sisters, they're the ones filling up the prison today in these likewise chain gangs. You don't think at this time our brothers and sisters thought, God, I wish this day was over. I can't wait for this day to be over. And at night, when they're getting raped by massa, I can't wait for this night to be over. Come on.
Wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see.
Because the mother walking around carrying a dead infant, you don't think that troubled her at the sight of that? The baby's father, her husband, you don't think that troubled him? Watching their brothers, their sisters being led off into captivity to wherever. Come on.
That was it.
Oh, that was it. Down here we have another example, all right? Let's see what this says. All right, we see here woman yokes around their neck. Let's see what they have to say about it, the historians. The women were merely tied together with the rope, because they're women, all right? About the size of a bed cord, which was tied like a halter round the neck of each. But the men, of whom was the stoutest and the strongest, were very different caparisons. A strong iron collar was closely fitted by means of a padlock round each of our necks. Around each of our necks. This is a first-hand accounting given of a slave. All right? A chain of iron about 100 feet in length was passed through the hasp of the padlocks, except at the two ends, where the hasp of each padlock passed through chain about a foot long, uniting the handcuffs and their feet wears in pairs. So they had chains about the neck and about the feet. In this manner were chained alternately by the right and left hand. And the poor man to whom I was thus ironed wept like an infant when the blacksmith wept like an infant when the blacksmith with his heavy hammer fastened the ends of the bolts that had kept the staple from slipping from our arms. You don't think they caught some of their flesh in them locks? For my own part, I felt indifferent to my fate. It appeared to me that the worst had come, that would come, and that no change of fortune would harm me. He felt this is as worse as it could get, I guess. With God, it was even. With God, it was morning. With that, we're going to go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 48.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee.
The so-called white man is whom the Lord sent against us. Come on.
In hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness.
We serve them in hunger, just like today. When you want something to eat, where you going to go get it from? The so-called white man. Be it a grocery store or be it on this plantation. We raise cattle, we pick cotton, but we had to be divvied our portion. And we served them in hunger. Master, thank you. Some drink. We served them in thirst, come on.
And in nakedness. And in want of all things.
If your little baby girl or boy needs some glitter, where you going to get it from? Jerome ain't about to sell you no glitter or no glue. Come on.
And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee.
Like it says here, a strong iron collar was closely fitted by means of a padlock around each of our necks. That's what they did to our men. All right? This is history. The Bible is our history.
So here we are, further down the slave trail, where I spent 25 years of my life fishing. So right now, I want Anab to bring out the book of Matthew chapter 4 and verse 18.
The book of Matthew, chapter 4 and verse 18. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brethren, Simon, called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. Verse 19. And he said unto them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.
So he said, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And that's what I'm doing right now, me and my brother. So let's walk down the trail a little bit to this next marker. So this one here is called the Creole Revolt. And I'm going to read it, bring out a little bit about this. So it says, in October of 1841, Madison, Washington, and over 100 other men were sold from Richmond slave jails and ordered for export to New Orleans, although the infamous Robert Lumpkin did not own his jail until 1844. He was one of several shippers in Richmond who contracted with the Creole, and some sources suggest that he might have owned anywhere from 41 to 90 of the passengers slated for this particular voyage. Not only that, he ended up being married to one of the slaves and having children with her. Now, after their purchase by slave traders, Madison, Washington, and the rest of the enslaved African Americans, which are Israelites, destined for the New Orleans, poignantly reversed the walk that had once led tens of thousands of Israelites trafficked in the transatlantic slave trade. The future could promise little more than hardship and suffering in strange and foreign lands, because they didn't just bring us here, they brought us to the Caribbean and South America too. Now, for those aboard the Creole, however, a different future awaited. Shortly after leaving the port at Hampton Roads and setting sail on the high seas, Washington rallied 18 of the other enslaved blacks and planned to take control of the ships, secretly freeing themselves of their shackles and chains. The men surprised the crew on deck, seized hold of their weapons, and demanded the Creole set a course for Nassau, a British-governed port in the Bahamas. So the Bahamas was owned by the British. They enslaved our brothers and sisters down there. Now, scholars speculate that Washington was one of the many enslaved people who participated in an extensive communication network that had developed over the years. As one captive could be sold and exported several times over the course of his or her life. Word of mouth traveled quickly. Through this network, enslaved Israelites learned of the fate of loved ones from whom they had been separated. Compassionate abolitionists willing to help them pursue freedom, or previous revolts that had or had not succeeded. It is highly likely that the captives aboard the Creole had heard enough about maritime law and navigation to avoid several pitfalls. For example, they started their mutiny after the ship entered international waters beyond the jurisdiction of the United States. Secondly, by seeking refuge at a British port, they would be considered free, as Great Britain set forth an emancipation decree in 1833. And thirdly, with the story of the Amistad. That's where all this information came from. Our brothers that were aboard the Amistad that killed their captives, and they went to court. That's where they learned this information. If you don't know it, look it up, about the La Amistad. Still ringing in their ears, Washington and his crew were able to determine if the ship's course was truly set for Nassau or if they were being deceived by the captain and en route to an American port. So, our destination is going to be Robert Lumpkin's jail. But right here is the Creole Revolt. We see how our brothers and sisters heard about the La Amistad and got their own freedom. Now we're going to move on to another spot. So now we have moved further up the river, further along on the slave trail, and we come to this plaque saying slavery challenge. You can see our brother begging for his freedom. But now there's something else written over here, but before we read that, I want Anab to bring out the book of Exodus chapter 1, verse 8.
The book of Exodus, chapter 1 and verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
Right, who knew not our forefather Joseph. Come on.
Verse 9. And he said unto the people, and he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
Right.
Verse 10. Come on, let us deal wisely with them.
Let us deal wisely with them. Go ahead.
Lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when they falleth out in the war, they join also unto our enemies.
Right, so they wanted to sway our people so that if there was ever a war, that we wouldn't side with their enemies. So let's listen to the craftiness of these Edomites that had us in slavery. This is Thomas Jefferson regarding the abolition of slavery. We have the wolf by the ear, and we can neither hold him safely nor let him go. It's the same way Pharaoh was when he had us in Egypt. They know that we're the children of Israel, and we're a mighty and strong nation. So they dealt with us wisely, and so did the white man. But when he let us go, we were already destroyed in our minds.
We had to break our mind first because they couldn't deal with us physically.
Right. All right, with that, we're going to move to the next spot. Okay, y'all. Here we are at another marker. And this one says, Richmond's Burgoyne Trade. Upon reaching Virginia, enslaved Africans were forced to walk along the riverbanks and into nearby cities, including Richmond, for further sale. This routine practice, when Virginia officially passed a law prohibiting the importation of Africans, Israelites, to its shores in 1778. The federal 1808 law that banned all African importation severely curtailed the supply of coerced labor that was crucial to Southern states' agricultural fortitude. As a result, the lower South veered suddenly toward economic crisis. So what this is saying, that in 1778, they no longer allowed you to bring in Africans to import them into this country. So what they would do to keep you from seeing that they were coming off slave ships and being imported from other places, they would park their boats downriver and walk us up along the slave trade. So, now we're going to move on to another marker.
We're here at another landmarker, Mayo's Bridge. We walked up from the trail from down that way, came around, and now we're up here at another historical sighting. It says the Union soldiers would put out the fires and push into the city within hours of the Confederates, passing over the bridges. Among the first Union soldiers to put down their muskets and pick up fire hose and axes will be the several regiments of the United States colored troops. So as you see again, man, we always the ones doing stuff. We always the ones bearing the brunt of the force. We're always the one doing the hardest jobs, carrying stuff, which is always like when you look at the times when a black man could be in, when they first started letting us be in the army. They would put us on the front line. You basically like, hey, y'all niggas take the first couple shots, and the good old white man go come behind you and clean up the rest. You basically was walking bulletproof vests. They say free slaves who had joined the Union Army for free other blacks, to free other blacks. So they was joining the army to free their people. Think about that. How many people are doing that today as so-called black people, so-called Hispanic, Native American? How many people are doing that, using their position as mayors, police chiefs, even entertainers, athletes that have the type of money to help their people out? How many of y'all are using what the Most High has allowed you to gain to help your people? You got people in the ghettos that can't see the things the world had to offer. While some of these football players and basketball players and rappers are not using their money to travel the world. Go see these things. Go see Petra. Go see Jerusalem. Go see what these monuments are in the scriptures, or even buy these books that cost $20,000, $30,000 and bring out this information. While the poor people got to scramble it together and buy a book for $1,000 to try to teach you our people, but you don't listen to us. But you listen to the famous people. These brothers was putting their life on the line to go free their people. Their whole goal was to, oh nah, I'm free, so let me go back and get my brother. Versus nowadays, I made it out, y'all better get yours because I got mine. It says instead of letting the Confederate capital burn to the ground, these black men who had every reason to hate Richmond helped save it. The scriptures say, though hand join hand, the wicked will not go unpunished. So our people had every right to let this city burn to the ground, but they saved it. Why? Because as the scriptures say, they already was destroyed in their mind. You think I'm going to save this country if it's burning? When the Most High God sent Christ to destroy this place, Lord's will, we be fighting with Christ, but our damn sure ain't going to be trying to put out no fire, man.
Right. Stop the assimilation. Help your brothers and sisters. So we came up the slave trail. We're crossing the bridge just like our forefathers had to, coming into this nasty place, into this nasty captivity of Babylon. Babylon the Great. Now we're going to head towards Lumpkin's jail, where they sold our people on the auction blocks. Brothers and sisters, we are at our destination. We are at Lumpkin's jail. Behind you is Main Street Station, and to the left of that is the Old Farmers Market. And in that area is where they sold our forefathers and foremothers into slavery. That's where they put us on the auction blocks. Behind us is Lumpkin's jail. And what we're going to do is read out of this book called Lies Across America, and we're going to hit a couple of scriptures too. So, Brother Bethel.
The book Lies Across America, page 282. Is that chapter?
Yeah.
Chapter 62, Slavery and Redemption. Richmond was one of the great centers of the slave trade. But today, the city contains not one historical marker or site alluding to the buying and selling of human beings. If you stand today where Broad Street passes over Interstate 95, formerly 15th Street, you are in the heart of Richmond's famous slave market.
So right now we're standing where the slave markets used to be. You can hear the cars going by. Behind this building is Interstate 95. And then to your right is Broad Street. That's where we are. Go ahead.
Until April 3rd, 1865, local African Americans called this area the Devil's Half Acre.
So our people, the Israelites, we call this place the Devil's Half Acre. Come on.
One reason was Robert Lumpkin's prosperous slave trading business located on Lumpkin Alley, which intersected Broad opposite 15th Street coming in from the north.
Which is where we're standing. Come on.
Today, Lumpkin Alley is the parking lot and industrial area visible below Broad Street.
Right, exactly where we're standing. Come on.
Page 283. Slave trading was a big industry. In the 1850s, Richmond's biggest export was not tobacco, flour, or iron, but slaves.
But slaves, selling our people. Come on.
A Scandinavian tourist named Fredrika Bremer visited several slave jails in Richmond in 1851. Historian Frederick Bancroft relates what Bremer saw. In one jail sat a strong-limbed Negro, silent and gloomy, who had cut off the fingers of his right hand as a strange revenge against his master.
Why?
For separating him from his wife and children and ordering him sold south.
So he got separated from his family, from his wife and his children, and he was sold. Let's see if that's in the scripture. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 32.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people.
Shall be given unto another people, just like this man's wife and children. Come on.
And thine eyes shall look and fare with longing for them all the day long.
Because we had no might to get our family back. There was nothing he could do. That's why he was upset and cut his fingers off. There was nothing he could do. He had no power to do anything. Now give me verse 41.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 41. Thou shalt begot sons and daughters,
Right.
but thou shalt not enjoy them.
You shall not enjoy them. Why?
For they shall go into captivity.
Because they are going to go into captivity. He lost his family. That's one of the curses on our people. We are the biblical Israelites. These things happen to our people. Now, go down to this, starting this chapter here. Read that.
The last paragraph on page 283. In 1866, Reverend Nathaniel Clover, a Boston minister, came to Richmond to establish a school to train African Americans to be ministers. No white would rent him a suitable building, but Mary Ann Lumpkin offered to lease him Lumpkin's jail, a solid 2-story structure with barred windows. With unconcealed enthusiasm, historian Leon Lichtbach writes, black workers knocked out the cells, removed the iron bars from the windows, and refashioned the old jail into a school.
So Robert Lumpkin, after slavery was abolished, he married one of our sisters and had children with her. When he died, she inherited everything that he owned, including Lumpkin's jail. So she sold it to this minister, pastor, whatever he was, and then he started teaching our people lies. So once slavery was over, and we were destroyed mentally, then here comes Christianity to help keep us destroyed. Now read that.
The transformation of the building reflected an equally extraordinary metamorphosis within Robert Lumpkin, who died in 1867. Had he lived, many whites would have despised Lumpkin for abetting black education.
So other whites would have despised him for trying to teach us anything. They didn't want us to learn. Go ahead.
The particular target of white vigilante violence during Reconstruction. The school, Richmond Theological Seminary, survived after many mergers, name changes, and relocations endorsed today as Virginia Union University.
Right. So his wife sold the jail, which ended up becoming Virginia Union University, where a lot of our brothers go to learn theology, which is still the ideologies of our enemy. So they're still, to this day, using that to keep us mentally destroyed. Now give me the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 64. Right.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people.
Right, he did that. Come on.
From one end of the earth, even unto the other.
He did that too.
And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known.
Because our forefathers in Israel, we did not know their gods. We didn't know white man Jesus. We didn't do the things they do in Christianity or Catholicism. We didn't deal with that at all. Our fathers did not know those gods. All right, now finish that out, bro.
Which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
Right, we did not know Christianity, and we definitely did not know Islam. We did not deal with those things. We knew who our forefathers were. We knew what they looked like. You couldn't fool them with white man Jesus. It took generations to do that. So, there you have it. We have walked the slave trail, showing you what our forefathers went through. We end up here at Lumpkin's jail. So that ends our journey on the Richmond slave trail. With that, I'm Brother Jacob. To my right,
Brother Bethel.
and to my left,
Brother Anam.
visit us at IsraelitesSaintsOfChrist.org and on Facebook, Virginia Israelites and Israelite Saints of Christ. With that, we say
Shalom.
Shalom.